What might ultimately compel you to throw your hat into the presidential ring?
Oh, there's nothing. I'm not going to run for president, period, end of story.
Ever?
I think at my age, ever is an easy thing to say.
Really? So this videotape is not going to come back to haunt you?
No.
Good evening. We start with some very surprising breaking election news. Mike Bloomberg, billionaire businessman and three-time New York City mayor, is preparing to enter the Democratic race. His spokesman said he is expected to file the necessary paperwork to get on the Democratic primary ballot in Alabama this week.
Another New Yorker who's built a great company is Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. He's now toying with the idea of running as a third-party independent. If he were to do so, could you beat him?
I'd beat him, and I would love him to do it, actually. I love the competition. I love the competition.
So absolutely not.
I'm not going to run for president.
We're learning more about former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg's announcement that he will not be running for president, writing, "There is a good chance that my candidacy could lead to the election of Donald Trump or Senator Ted Cruz."
Scratch one billionaire off the list for the 2020 presidential campaign. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg now saying he will not be running as a Democrat for the presidential nomination.
How serious was he considering the presidential run? Pretty serious.
I know we can do better as a country, and I believe I would defeat Donald Trump in a general election. But I am clear-eyed about the difficulty of winning the Democratic nomination in such a crowded field.
Is just in on the 2020 beat. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has announced that he will not run for president in 2020. He will not.
As we heard earlier, Michael Bloomberg is not running for president. The former mayor of New York made the announcement on Twitter earlier today. CBS News has confirmed that former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is considering entering the 2020 race.
But he doesn't have the magic to do well. Little Michael will fail.
The truth of the matter is, when you look at the layout of who's going to vote and where the country is, I would be very unlikely to get elected. But in the private sector, I can make a difference.
The big question today is, will he enter the 2020 presidential race?
Michael Bloomberg is reportedly preparing to make a late entrance into the 2020 Democratic primary race.
Whatever the reason, yesterday we learned that former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is now actively preparing to enter the Democratic presidential primary.
You want to run the country?
No. I have no plans to run for president.
Two big names announced today they're not running for president next year. Hillary Clinton and Michael Bloomberg.
Former Mayor Mike Bloomberg takes a major step towards possibly running for president. He filed the paperwork today to get his name on the primary ballot in Alabama as a Democrat.
New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg says he's not running for president, and he really means it this time. The mayor made that declaration in an op-ed piece for the New York Times.
And I've assembled a team all ready to go. But at some point, you've got to say, look, I would be 79 years old when I took office. People say, well, Ronald Reagan was 80 when he left. Yeah, when he was 80, they carried him out gaga. But it's just not going to happen on a national level for somebody like me starting where I am, unless I was willing to change all my views and go on what CNN called an apology tour. I wish we had. I'm sorry that we didn't. Back then, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Joe Biden went out and apologized for being male, over 50, white. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Everybody else, Beto, whatever his name is, he's apologized for being born.
It was a brilliant strategy to take guns and crime off the street. Right. Here's the newsflash. Before it happened, this policy worked. Bloomberg looks like a purely political animal by doing this. It looks weak. It looks pathetic. And I think it'll backfire on him. And by the way, remember one more thing. He's trying to claim the moderate lane, too. So this isn't the way to do it.
Bloomberg was the mayor for 12 years. So he had 12 years to make a decision and an assessment as to what the effectiveness of this policy was. Whether you agree or disagree with it, it goes back to you being a leader. You need to stand behind your decisions and move forward. You need to analyze and ensure that what you're doing is a quality piece and move it forward. And I don't think that's what happened here.
There is nobody I'd rather run against than little Michael. That I can tell you. I am your voice.